Hello guys, I'm Combo Movie Film Productions, and welcome back to another installment of the DC film retrospective. Today's film is a sequel to the hit first film, Superman 2. After the enormous success of the first Superman film, the sequel was put out a couple years later. But this film wasn't in development like most sequels are, because both the first film and this film were shot back to back, for the most part. It was based on Mario Puzo's script, which covered both films I briefly mentioned in the first Superman review, but due to the first film going over budget and having to be delayed from a summer release to a Christmas release, they stopped filming the sequel in order to finish the first film. Troubles arose on set between Richard Donner and the Salkinds due to creative differences, and after the first film got released in theaters, Donner was open about his troubles on set, and so him and the Salkinds parted ways along with John Williams and a portion of the staff leaving either due to protesting or simply their contract was up, depends on who you ask. But anyways, the Salkinds decided to get a new director in Richard Lester, who previously worked with the Salkinds in directing the 3 and 4 Musketeer movies, and was ironically suing them at the time due to the Salkinds being cheapskates and not paying him the amount he was supposed to be given for directing those films. And on top of that, Marlon Brando was also suing them for not paying a portion of the film's box office that was agreed when he was signed. Hence, his scenes were cut in the theatrical version. So the Salkinds made a deal with Lester to reshoot a lot of the film, because Donner, before leaving, reportedly shot about 75% of the film, so Lester had to reshoot at least half the film to get credit as the main director, and he did just that. So after all the drama took place, the film got released in theaters in December 1980 to 1981, depending on what region you lived in, and was another big box office success and a critical hit. Some even say it's better than the original. But we're not done yet, since another cut did get released in 2006, in the Donner cut of Superman 2. It was originally conceived as back as 2001, but due to Donner being reluctant on the project, along with Warner Bros. Not having much access to the footage with Marlon Brando and other scenes, it got put on hold until Superman Returns began production, allowing Warner Bros. To clean up a lot of the rights issues and managing to get the footage back, add extra special effects, cut out certain scenes, and Donner and the editors making the film that was originally supposed to be, and some say it's better than the theatrical cut. But we'll get more into that cut later. Now with the history out of the way, let's get into the plot. The film starts out with Lois Lane going to Paris to scoop up a story about terrorists from the Daily Planet, and sneaks onto the Eiffel Tower as the rest of the reporters are trying to get in. She hides underneath an elevator, but doesn't realize there's a bomb in the elevator. Clark turns into Superman when Perry White brings up that Lois is there, and Clark is worried for her safety. Superman saves her as he throws the elevator into space, causing a nuclear explosion to break Zod, played by Terrence Stamp, and his minions Nana and Ursa, who were briefly in the first film out of the Phantom Zone because they were close by. Shortly after, due to a change in the atmosphere from Krypton, they gain the same powers as Superman, but decide to cause havoc from killing astronauts on the moon, to destroying a small town, to invading the White House and planning to control the world. Meanwhile, Clark and Lois go to Niagara Falls to report a story about honeymoon suites ripping off customers. But while they're there, Lois begins to suspect Clark is Superman after Superman saves a kid from falling off the rail into the falls. He tries his hardest not to reveal his true identity, but when falling into a fire he and Lois are having in the room, he doesn't get burned at all and reveals himself. He then takes Lois to the Fortress of Solitude as they do romantic things, ending off with Clark asking his mom, who's in the crystals, to take away his powers because he wants to be with Lois, and he becomes human. Shortly after, he and Lois go to a diner, and he gets beaten up by a guy, and realizes that Zod and his goons are gonna take over the world. So he goes back to the Fortress of Solitude and finds the green crystal that created the fortress, and manages to get his powers back. Meanwhile, Lex Luthor shows up to help Zod and his minions because he wants to take over the world too. Earlier in the film, he broke out of the prison from the help of Eve, and found the Fortress of Solitude to find out more about Superman, and finds out his true identity. So he tells them to go to Daily Planet HQ and find him. They don't see him anywhere until he shows up back in his iconic suit and fights the 3 Kryptonians in Metropolis, with them winning and also taking Lex and Lois to the Fortress of Solitude. Superman meets them there and he tricks Lex into thinking he's telling the truth about taking his powers away, but reverses the race so Zod and his minions get their powers taken away as they fall into the abyss. The film ends with Clark wiping Lois' memory of his true identity with a forgetting kiss, due to how broken she is about him, as he repays the destruction Zod and his minions cause, and also beats up the guy who beat him up earlier in the film at the diner, as he flies into space and looks at the camera again as credits roll. The biggest improvement from the first film is definitely the action. The action in the first film was good, but not as fun or exciting as this film is. From the final fight in Metropolis, Zod destroying the town, and other scenes that are fun and exciting to watch. The film has a lot of good comedy to it and some fine dialogue, along with Zod and his goons being a threat to Superman, and always bringing the film up whenever they are on screen. Terrence Stamp still to show Zod in this movie, and is way better than here than the other comic movie I talked about that he was in, playing Stick in the Electro movie, but we don't talk about that. Along with that, the movie has a faster pace than the first film, has some good acting, and some improved visual effects that out of all the 80s Superman movies is probably the best they would ever get, and as a whole is a good companion to the first film. Even though the film's entertaining, it doesn't necessarily feel like a movie. What I mean by that is that the whole film definitely feels like somebody else's vision due to the film feeling stitched together, and the story feeling really condensed. With it just being about Zod coming to Earth, Superman taking his powers away because of Lois, and then 2 seconds later getting it back, fights Zod and then wins. Nothing in the film feels like it has any weight to it in my opinion. And there are many other aspects that feel cheaper than the first one, lacks a lot of the heart the first one had, and definitely feels more like a straightforward superhero film, which isn't bad, but still. Also, it's obvious which scenes were by Lester and Donner, due to the acting not being as strong in Lester's scenes, and the film having a foggy look to it almost. Along with the score, which is nowhere near the level of Williams. And the film feels like it crams stuff in there that doesn't need to be here, the biggest aspect being about Lex, who shouldn't have been here. And also, Superman and Lois don't feel as likable as the first film, and they feel a lot more selfish, and their scenes in this cut feel a lot more awkward than the Clark Kent stuff, which also isn't as good this time around. It's an interesting film, but not really a memorable one either. Before I get into my final thoughts, I want to discuss the Donner cut. I usually don't cover other cuts of movies due to them not being substantial enough to be covered more than the brief mention in the history section in the review, or some not even being available entirely. I haven't done this before in my reviews with the exception of the director's cut of Daredevil 2003, which was a massive improvement over the theatrical cut, and my thoughts on the Donner cut are exactly that. I know a lot of you may prefer the theatrical cut, but I find it to be a little overrated. Donner's vision really closes the movie and a lot of the issues I had with the theatrical cut. It adds a lot of extra character moments that make the theatrical cut's broken structure fixed up and fixes up a lot of plot holes, and it makes the film feel a whole lot more smoother. Along with Brando's scenes being added in, making Superman's arc a lot more emotional, especially the ending with him destroying the Fortress of Solitude, and John Williams' score really brings the film up, and also cutting out some moments that don't need to be here, like the Paris scene and some of the goofy dialogue, along with the ending being changed from a quick kiss to time travel, which I still don't like that much, but at least is consistent with the first film. As a whole, although it still has a lot of problems like Lex shouldn't have been here in the movie, and I wish there were more interaction between Zod and Superman, and the film should have fleshed out Lois and Clark's relationship more, it's a big improvement in my opinion, and I'm glad I watched it. Overall, Superman 2 in both versions is a decent sequel, but neither come close to the original because they lack the fleshed out feeling the first film had, but still contains a lot of the same aspects from the good acting, fun villains, improved action, arcs that get explored and paid off, and more positives that still make it a good companion to the first film. But I wish the film went through a few more rewrites to make it something as good as the original was. In my opinion, I think the film is a little overrated, but Gravy enjoyed it as much or more than the original. But the Donner cut really does make it better and fixes up a lot of the issues I have with the theatrical cut. Although I recommend both versions, watch the Donner cut. And not to spoil my reviews for later installments in this series, but although I have problems with both versions of this film, it's gonna be a while before we get another decent film from this character. I give Superman 2 the theatrical cut a B-, a 7 out of 10, and a rent-to recommendation. And I give the Donner cut a B+, an 8.5 out of 10, and a rent-to recommendation also. So that's Superman 2, both versions of it. What did you guys think about it, and which version do you prefer? Leave your thoughts in the comments, and please make sure to like and subscribe for more content. I'm Combo Movie Film Productions, and this isn't the last DC film to review because justice needs to be served.